My name is Diane Starziak, and I am a master food preserver. I'm a mother of 3 children and another mother of 250 women and their babies, because we had a home-run wed moms and their babies for almost 20 years. And that's when I started to can a lot, because we had to feed all these girls and children that came. So I taught the girls that came to the maternity home how to can, and that's what really started us. I was just telling some people before, we used to make jams and jellies and 34 kinds of jams and jellies, and we'd sell them at craft fairs and things like that to help with the maternity home. But I think that the biggest reason that I can is because one year, the first year that I canned, I went out and did everything that new canners do. I went out and picked strawberries, and I had little kids with me, and I always believed that the people at the strawberry place in the field should weigh the kids before they and weigh them in and then weigh them out, because they eat more than, I can't believe they can eat a quart of strawberries in that time that you're picking, but they do. And so I made strawberry jam, and I made blueberry jam, and I did tomatoes, and I did lots of pickles and fun stuff like that. And now it's November, and we had room off of our kitchen that we used to put our some of our canning stuff in, and our recyclables and the trash and things like that. So this particular day, I went out and I had my recyclables and I put them in the can. And my husband came out and walked in and stood behind me. And now, where we're looking at, it's like looking at the back wall. And here I've got this 4-foot by 10-foot shelf there, full of tomatoes and all the jams and stuff like that that I've canned. And he came over and put his hand on my hip and whispered in my ear, and he said, "You did that for me." And I said, "Yes." And I have been doing that for him ever since. I thought that somebody would appreciate so much that you did something like that. That was a gotcha. I never turned back. So nowadays, when it comes canning time, if I can't can, if something has happened that I fell backwards a couple of years ago and I couldn't do a lot of work, the only thing that I can is peaches, because he thinks peaches are the best thing in the world, and home canned peaches, you just can't beat them. They're so much better than any of the canned peaches you get in the store. So you have to pick your thing, you pick what your battles are, and peaches was the one that I was going to win. So what I want to do today is I want to tell you a little bit about canning, and very little bit about freezing, and a lot more about dehydrating. I was going to talk about lacto-fermentation, but my class is normally a 2-hour class, and it's an hour and a half here, so something had to get cut. So if you want to know about lacto-fermentation, call me on the phone, and we'll talk about making kimchi and yogurt and all sorts of fun stuff like that. So again, my name is Diane, my daughter Hannah in the back, and Hannah is learning how to can. She's helped me with peaches because my canner has left to go to become a midwife. So she's off in Kansas right now, and I am without a canning partner. So Hannah is going to become my canning partner. So where I will start is talking about freezing. Freezing, everybody knows how to freeze, I really think. The big thing with freezing is that you have to be able to understand that you pick up your Bible. The Ball book is a Bible, an inexpensive Bible. You can buy other books. This is an absolutely wonderful book called So Easy to Preserve. And the So Easy to Preserve book is done by the Cooperative Extension of the University of Georgia for the food organization, the United States Extension Program. So these 2 books are like really cool. This one tells you a lot of education. If you want to find out why something didn't work, you can look this up and it'll tell you. If you want to find out why you can't can garlic in oil, it'll answer your questions for that too. One of the things that I've been looking on Vistaprint, I want to buy a cheap banner that says, "Canning is not creative cooking." You get a lot of people that want to can, and they've got these great ideas and wonderful things, but they haven't been tested. And that's what we were talking about before a lot of you came in, was that if you're getting a book recipe from the Ball book, if you're getting a recipe from So Easy to Preserve, all of these recipes have been tested in kitchens numerous times to make sure that they know what they're doing and that they're not will not cause problems and in the way that you're eating them, and they will last, for a year or so in your pantry. If you see a recipe on YouTube, you see a recipe online, you really need to look it up and see how it compares to the Ball book. So these are the go-to books that you really want to look at and have when you're starting to can. The other banner that I want to get, it says the things that you've done before might not be right anymore, because again, we're going to talk about jam. Years ago, they made jam and they covered it with paraffin wax. I said when I started making jam, we turned the jars upside down and the air all went out, and that's not a safe way to do it. So there's all sorts of things that you're going to learn about in doing it this way, and the way that they've tested. When I talked to you about testing, one of the things that they taught us at our class was pureed pumpkin. Now, I've put away pureed pumpkin and squashes and things like that, but they don't recommend putting in pureed pumpkin anymore, putting it up, because there's no way that they can test the internal temperature of the pumpkin to make sure that it got hot enough in the middle. So what they recommend is that you chunk it and then you can can it, so that you've got all the water, hot water going around all the chunks every place. Where with the puree, you're not sure what's happening. So canning has been around for years. I mean, people have been doing it for years, and we're finding some of the ways have been good, some of the ways haven't been good. But there's basically two ways to can, and everybody will probably remember their grandmas have big blue kettles. Mine's a black kettle, but it's a big kettle, and it's a hot water bath kettle. All you do is you put hot water in it. What you want to do, and I didn't bring mine, is you can use any kettle as a hot water bath kettle, as long as you have like a cake rack or something like that you can put on the bottom so that there's water going all around. You have to have water circulating underneath and around and over your hot water bath. When you go into the Ball book, it'll show you pictures of the way that the water is supposed to circulate. So you want to be able to have a kettle that's big enough and tall enough to be able to get that circulation of water. While I remember, one of the things that we talked to you about is when you're hot water bathing, they're going to talk to you about boiling. You want to have a boil. Well, you want to have a boil, yes, but you don't want to have it rolling boil. You want to just have it so that it boils. If it's rolling like the tempest of the sea, what's going to happen is your food might start to boil like that inside, and a couple of things might happen. The food might, because it gets so hot in there, it might push it out of the can, or your jars might, I use all different age jars. I don't label my jars. It says I bought this in 1964 or whatever. So sometimes what happens is when you pull a jar out, and if you've boiled it too hard, you'll pull it out and it'll be really light because all the food in the bottom of the jar will be in the bottom of the pan. So that's what happens is that you were boiling it too far. Even I learn all these wonderful things. So the boiling water method is the preferred method of acid-based foods. The ones that are low acid, like tomatoes and things like that, what we do is we put lemon juice in it to make it to bring the acid up. With pickles, we use vinegar to to change the pH of it so that it's able to be canned in a hot water bath. If you're using something that is not, you know, high acidic, or it's meat, or some vegetables like beans and things like that, then you're going to go to your pressure canner. Now, I can tell you that I bet you everyone in the house has stories that they heard from their grandparents about pressure cookers. My story was my grandmother was pressure canning, well, she wasn't pressure canning, she was just pressure cooking clam chowder when somebody must not have been watching or paying attention, but it exploded and the clam chowder was all over the ceiling. But I can tell you that from the pressure canning point of view, I told you I have a daughter that was my canning partner. This was her favorite thing. She was the pressure canner person. And with pressure canners, what you've got is a couple of different things. You've got a gauge that tells you what the pressure inside the canner should be, and you've got this little ticker. I can't remember what's in my brain. Anyway, what happens with pressure canners is you're not going to use the water. Everything's not going to be covered in water. It's going to have a book, and it's going to say, use a cup of water, or use a half a cup of water, or whatever, depending on how many jars you're putting in. And what happens is the water builds up, and as the pressure builds up, rather, it gets hot in there, and it starts to cook. Now, in your book, it's going to say, cook at a 10-pound or a 15-pound or whatever weight. This is the weight. So you put your weight on, and you wait for it to get to that point. Pressure canners. Okay. I put the water in. I do what the book says. Now, if you don't have your book for a pressure canner, you go online, and Presto and a lot of the other companies will have their books, the old books to your pressure cooker canner online, so you can find out exactly the recipes that they use for using their pressure canner. But anyway, what you've got is it's just a big aluminum pot, just like the other one, and big aluminum pot with something to let the water go underneath, so your cans can be, feel the steam rising and things like that. You put your food in there. This has a rubber ring, and so you always want to watch every year before you start to can. You want to know that your rubber ring is still good. It's not dry rotted or anything like that, because that's what's going to keep you safe. Like I said earlier, the whole thing about canning is safety. So you want to make sure your rubber ring is right, and this is what it looks like if you need to buy a new one. And you can get them at Presto. You can get them sometimes at Walmart, places like that sell hardware stores. True Values, I don't know if they still have them, but that's where we used to send a lot of people. So what you do is you get it in, you lock it up, and then you turn the heat on. And the heat it's going to heat up, and what you're going to do is you're going to wait. And then, because you're not going to have this on, you're going to wait, and all of a sudden, this particular little pet top here is going to start blowing steam. And the steam will come up, and when the steam starts to come up in a nice, strong stream of steam, then you can put this on. So you have to be aware of your pressure canner while you're doing that, because you don't want so much steam to come out that when you put this on, it's not going to cook because you've let it boil for the last hour and you forgot about it. So you put this on, and what that does is it prevents the steam from coming out anymore, and it starts to register the amount of pressure in the pot. And so what you'll do is you'll see on the gauge what the pressure is. So this is where I tell you about my daughter, Naomi, who really likes to help me can, and she likes pressure canning the best. Because up until you're ready to put the jars into the pot, pressure canning and hot water bath is the same. You're gonna prepare all your vegetables. You're going to cut them and put them in the jars, and then you're going to put them in the pot. Well, now this is going to cook for half an hour, 10 minutes, a half an hour, whatever it tells you you have to cook for the water bath. This you have to be a little bit more aware of. And so what she says is, I've got this covered, Mom. No problem. You can go and do whatever you want. And what she does is she sits her chair in the kitchen, and she grabs a book, and she's, I'm working. And she'll look at the canning, and she'll look there, it'll say, let's say it's 12 pounds of pressure it's supposed to be at. Okay, it's 12 pounds of pressure. She'll read her book. She'll look up, oh, it's gone down to 11 pounds. So she'll turn the heat up a little bit. Oh, it's, and she'll look again, and it's gone up to 13 pounds, so she'll turn it down a little bit. It's very hard work for this hour and 10 minutes or whatever it is that this pressure canner is working. Once if it says like that you need to put the food in for an hour and 10 minutes from the time that the pressure is built up and you put this on, then what you do is nothing. You turn off the heat and you walk away, because you do not ever, 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 remember safety, want to open this up when it's under pressure, because it will be like a rocket. It will explode and you'll get burned and it won't be a fun thing. So you just walk away. Come back in a half an hour or so when the gauge is down to 0. Then it's time to open it up and take your jars out and set them on the counter. So that's my basic. Now there's this wonderful thing here called an emergency plug. If the pressure builds up too much and something's going wrong, sometimes it can pop and it'll let out the steam. So, but I've never had that happen, but it's always nice to know. Pressure kit. There's also another safety device where this one just totally pops and everything comes out at once, so that your can does not explode. So pressure canning is really easy and it's fun. This is how we do our tomato sauce with meat in it. You can do tomatoes in a hot water bath because you're using lemon juice to bring the pH up. You can do tomatoes with vegetables in here, but as soon as you put in meat, it goes into the pot because the pH of the meat changes everything. So that's pressure canning. And if you have questions, I'll be more than happy to answer them another time after class, what have you. Hot water bath I told you about. And now I'm going to tell you about some of the things that we can't or we shouldn't be doing, because a lot of people still, their grandma taught them how to can. And so the idea of canning in the oven is a no-no. It can't get up to the temperature internally like it can in a hot water bath. The steam canning is the same thing. A crock pot canning is the same thing. People have been talking about canning in the microwave. There may be some recipes that some people have been testing to do some jam, but that's it. And I would still, it's so easy to put on a kettle of water and take a jar and pop it in there for 10 minutes for jam. I mean, jam is a very easy thing. You make your jam, you crush your fruit, you put it with pectin, you put it in the thing and just walk away for 2 minutes and come back, set your timer and come back and take it out. It really is not a difficult thing. So let's see. Talk to you about the opening kettles, the steaming kettles. The other thing that I would like to talk about is the jars in the pot. When you're putting the jars, or when you are putting your food together, you're going to chop it, you're going to do whatever, you're going to put it in a food processor. You can use a Foley mill, a food mill like the one that I've got here. I have done all of that. When I was at the maternity home putting up jars and jars every afternoon, I would use the food processor. Now I've gotten to the point where it's just as easy. I don't have this all together right, but it's just as easy to turn a candle a little bit to do a batch, one batch at a time. So you can decide what kind of things you want to do. um, the water, what you want to do is you'll see a thing called headspace, and this is my example of headspace. When you're putting up food, it'll tell you it wants it to be a 1/4 inch or a 1/2 inch or 1 inch. Well, sometimes the food, when you put it in, it looks like where it's full, but then as things heat, it ends up getting a little mushy until it comes down. So, if you started up here, what would happen is the jar wouldn't seal. So you want to be able to put it where it tells you. If it says a 1/4 inch, then you want to put it a 1/4 inch, a 1/2 inch. But you do want to try to keep it as close to that line as possible, because some things you'll see, people that have food in their jar that comes down to here, that's not the way you want it. You want it to be nice. These are Billy beans. You'll see that there's a couple of pickles. The tops of them have, I started out where they belonged, but as they floated, some of them came up too high. So when I serve those, I'm going to just cut those tops off, because I want to make sure that they were preserved in the water and not just out of the water. And my big thing, this is the big poster that I want to put up. It says, when in doubt, throw it out. If you've got something that you don't feel comfortable with, even in your refrigerator now, if it's been there and something doesn't feel right, toss it. There's no reason to get anybody sick in your family. Food is really important, but it's good for our health. It's not given to us to make us ill. So when in doubt, throw it out. So headspace. What happens is you've got your jar. You're going to fill it. You're going to take your food, and you're going to prepare your jars. First, years ago, we used to say you've got to always boil them and keep them in hot water and things like that. Well, now what they've said is that you can do that. But sometimes, I was one of those crazy people that I wanted to keep them very hot until it was time. But by the time you put your food in 6 jars and got them all in the thing at the time, they weren't hot throughout. So what they've now told us is that by putting the food into the jars, into the hot water bath, if the food is in there for more than 10 minutes, the internal temperature of the food and the liquid inside, as well as the water outside, will sterilize the jar, inside and out. So you want to make sure you're starting with a clean, sterilized jar. But if you feel uncomfortable, like I did, then you know that it's working inside. So anyway, so you put your food in here. And before you do that, you have your lids and your rings. Lids you buy new every year, unless you buy a lid called a Tatler. And I have not worked with Tatlers very much. The Tatler is a reusable lid. It's a heavy plastic. It's supposed to be BHT-free and all the other letters free. But they're very expensive. So you get a dozen for like $16, $20, but you can use them over and over again. Walmart, any place that you can buy canning supplies, you buy your lid. Now, when I first started, I would just have my saucepan, and I would put my lids in, and I'd put my rings in, and then I would use this. And this is really great to pull your lid out, but I will tell you, if your water is nice and hot, and if you aren't fast, what happens is there's a magnet in here, and it's only held in by glue. And so the next thing you know, you pull this out, and this will still be in the jar at the bottom of your saucepan, and you'll have the plastic in your hand. So there's that. So you just have to be fast. Then I was really blessed. This you can get, it's like $1. I found these, and this is really great because you can put that in your saucepan and everything can get done together at the same time. You don't have to worry about sticking your hands in and possibly getting burned. A little bit of water splashing up. But I can also tell you, I'm an honest canner, but there are times that I've walked away, and this is connected with glue. And so I lift it up, and this is, you can see the glue that's run down. You know. So I was really blessed. Somebody came to my house one day and handed me this. And this is great. There's no glue any place. I stick it in. You're only supposed to leave it in for just seconds. But, things happen. And so you pull it out, and there they are. You've got your lids, you've got your rings. Everything is in one place. So what you do is you've got your lid and your ring. You've got your food in your jar. You're going to take a clean cloth, and you're going to wipe the ring, the edge of your jar, and sometimes you might have to wipe the inside with this clean rag, because you want to have a nice place for your lid to seal. If you've got a raspberry seed or something like that still on the top of the jar and it gets stuck, it can ruin your whole jar down, because it might not seal right. It might look beautiful when it comes out. It might even look like it's sealed. You could hear the wonderful popping noise. That's what we do the happy dance. All of a sudden you've got your canning stuff going, and it goes, and it's like, yes, one down, 6 more to go, or whatever. And you just keep waiting and listening for that to, and then you get disappointed when they seal and they don't make the noise. But you get the feeling. So anyway, if you seal and there's a seed in there, it might take a while. And someday you might go downstairs to your pantry and see that your beautiful raspberry jam has mold on it, because it is now didn't seal right in the air bottom. So those are the things. You've got your jar, you've got them put in, and you've taken them back out. And now what happens is, once your jars have the food sealed and they popped and everything is happy, you take your jars and you set them on the counter, and you leave them. What the ball book and people recommend is overnight, 24 hours. They don't want you to touch them because they want to make sure that they seal. Not all of us are lucky to have huge kitchens, so we pray a lot and move things closer together as they dry, get cooler, and keep canning and using the next counter over. But so when it's all done and your jar is sealed nice and tightly, what you do is you take the ring off, and you take these, and what I do is I just set them in the sink with hot soapy water, and I wash them with the hot soapy water, because you want to get all the food that might have come out from underneath the lid in the processing off of your jar. Because if you take it downstairs and put it on your shelf in your basement, and your basement's a little damp, that mold will grow on the outside. It's not going to grow on the inside because it's nice and sealed. But if you didn't clean your jars really well, there could be mold growing on the inside of your jar. So you want to be able to wash them and clean them, rinse them out under the water, set them in your strainer, and let them dry. In the meantime, you take your rings, you wash them, you let them dry, and you put them away. Now, if you happen to be in a basement, you want to use a paper bag or something instead of plastic or something like that, because the most important thing about these is they're reusable. You never put your food away with a ring on it, because there could be a false safety feeling about it. If this is holding the lid down, you're not going to know that the food might not have gotten, something might be a problem until there's a white layer of mold growing in there. Now, what they tell you, if you do find a jar with a white layer of mold, what they tell you they want you to do is to take and put the jar into hot water, and you dump the food in there, and you boil the food, and you boil the jar, and then they want you to throw away the jar and throw away the food after you've killed all the bacteria in the boiling water, because they want to make sure that you're not going to spread any mold or, Stachybotrys or Aspergillus or any of that good stuff, or my brain, wrong mold. but another name for bad stuff, salmonella, and things like that are toxic. They want to kill it in there and then not kill it in the landfill because it won't die in the landfill. It just freeze. So your jar is on the shelf. You label it. Nowadays, they used to have a place to put dates. Now you'll see when you look at my jars. These are from 2011. I use these for demo. We eat the ones, all the good ones, you know. So you're going to label it. You're going to tell people what it is. If you can't already know that is seafood, you know, and put it on the shelf and rotate. If you're going to come in, what they'd like you to, what Cornell Cooperative Extension likes to tell people is that he really thinks that you should can enough to eat that year. But if you happen to can more, then you take the new stuff and put it in the back and pull the old stuff up front so that you can get it done. Lids you don't put on here in store. Like I said, you want to be able to see if anything is happening with your food. And you should go down every week or every couple of weeks and just peruse, look and see if everything is going okay. And then you store these so that you can use them again. When it's time to can again, you want to make sure that your rings are in great shape. You're going to buy new lids, but you want to make sure your rings are in great shape. You want to make sure that there's no dings or dents along the round, that there's no rust, because those could stop the seal from being a good seal. So that's the way that is. Let's see, what else? Now I get to tell you about my fun stuff. In canning, when you start to do the jars, filling the jars, I have, and everybody has said, you have a lot of stuff. Well, it's things that I've developed, things that I've picked up along the way. I started out with a metal, aluminum, enamel, but it's got a dent in it and rust. So I only have that here because I want to show you it's got a dent and rust, and I didn't want that in my food. So if I could find a stainless steel, which I do have at home in my own pack of canning stuff, that's what I use is my stainless steel. But you can use a really nice funnel, and you just put it there, and when you put your food in it, it keeps your food from going over the jar and what have you. You can get a wide mouth. This is a regular mouth, but they also make them in the wide mouth to fit the large wide mouth jars. Once you've packed your food into the jars, one of the things it'll say you need to let the air out of the jar before you put the lid on it. And so you can buy one of these for $1, and you can just, what you do is you just go around, and you'll see the bubbles coming up the side, and notice the air is coming out. Well, this one is pretty cool because it also shows you this is the head space. It's a quarter, a half, 3/4. So you know that's how far it needs to be coming up the jar. Now, if you don't like to buy gadgets, you don't have to buy gadgets, because I tell everybody, you've got things in your house that will work perfectly well. I'm positive in your one of your drawers, you've got a butter knife, or you've got some kind of heavy plastic thing that you use for something, a cake mix, to frost your cakes or something like that. It'll work just as fine. I have not been seeing a lot of these, but this is my favorite piece, and I always wonder about taking it with me because I haven't seen a lot of them being made anymore. Because this will tell you, it says it's a 1/4 inch or a 1/4 cup. So what I want to do is I'm going to put my food in here, and I'm going to pull it out, and then I'm going to dump it. What I like is it's got the edge, so that I'm not constantly worried that I'm going to spill and have to pick it up off the table and off of my jar. So I like that. And then if you have to have your lid in the jar, you want to find something that is not metal, because when you go back to having your jar, I mean, these are little tricks that I picked up, because you can find jar lifters and lid lifters that are metal, but if you don't have one of these, or if now you find that the magnet is in the bottom of the thing, you still have to get these out. So you're going to just bring them out. I mean, and it's not going to burn your hand. Hot water is not going to burn you. I have these here because they were given to me. It's not something I would buy, but if you're only canning for yourself and maybe one other person, then sometimes this is not a bad idea. I'm a big canner, so when I can a lot. But if you're going to just can for yourself, the idea of just doing 3 pints at a time instead of 7 quarts, it might be a good thing if you want just something that's just for you. So they sell these. This is another Ball thing. Ball got out of the canning jar business. You know, they're still in it. They needed to expand their market, so they started coming up with other things. I talked to you about books. This is a Ball book, and it's got all of their tested recipes, more than the little book that I've shown everybody that somebody might be looking at. Now, the books that you're looking at, if you're looking at a World War II book, those are not good for the recipes anymore. But I keep them because I want people to see. When I first started canning, I had lots of bale and wire jars. And God protects the simple. I really do believe this, because when I canned my first pickles, I put the pickles in the jar, I put the lid on the jar, I brought this up, and I sealed it, and I put it in the hot water bath. Well, now years later, I found out that I did it wrong, because what you're supposed to do is you're supposed to do all of that, you put it in the jar, but the very back bail, the last bail, you don't seal until you take it out of the hot water bath. Once you take it out of the hot water bath, and the air, you leave it in like this so all of the air can come out. That's why you look at this. That's a 2-piece lid that floats until all of that hot water, all of the water and the air comes out. I mean, the water stays in, air comes out, and it floats and lets it out. Then when you put it on the counter, it seals. So with this, I was doing it wrong. And again, God protected me. So I kept those wonderful books, the World War II books and things like that, if you're looking at any of them, so that I could find out how they did it. And that's what they did. So let's see, I've talked about that, talked about this. The books are really what you want to do. Putting food by, that was a book for me. I really like that because I have a few recipes that I go to all the time. And they've got this is a long time ago, this is about 30 years old. But they do have a 14th edition or something like that. And it has a great and wonderful pie filling recipe. So I put up blueberry pie filling and cherry pie filling and peach pie filling. It's not like a fresh pie. If you're looking for a fresh peach pie, you're going to be disappointed. But it's gotten to the point where last year I put them up in quarts, and my husband decided he wanted blueberry jam, and he went in the cupboard and found this, and then he pulled it out. He didn't say he didn't know it's pie filling. He pulled it out and decided that he doesn't want me to make blueberry jam anymore. He only wants me to make blueberry pie filling because it was less sweet and he had more of it because it was a quart. So this is, as I travel around really quickly, I've shown you. Now, you guys are lucky because you live in Syracuse. I live in Oriskany, which is close to Utica. So one of my favorite places to go picking, well, I have two. I would like to be able to say that I was wealthy enough to go and buy everything organic. I have to make choices, and sometimes I pick my fruit or pick whatever, and I pray over it and say, God, you have to help it. But so I try to pick the best that I can. There is a blueberry patch in Berners Bay where I go pick. Now, this is a wonderful patch because where there's a blueberry patch in Utica, the blueberry bushes are only this big, and that means that you have to bend down like this. Well, I pick 100 pounds of blueberries, and I can and dehydrate and freeze and do all sorts of things. So the place in Berners Bay is called Holst, Holst, and I don't mind sharing some of my friends. They've become friends over the last 15, 20 years. They have their blueberries are up here on a tree, so I can stand in the tree. And what I'm going to tell you is, what you want to do is you want to get a belt, a man's belt or something like that, and you want to get a dollar pail from the dollar store, a sand pail, and you put that on your belt, and then you just stand there in the tree, and you pull off the berries and put them in the pan, and you've got your 5-gallon bucket or whatever you're going to do, and you can just stand there, and the girls do it with me. We just get this all done and dump our pails, and you can get lots. And when I go there I spend the day. I get there early. I pick. I go to Costanza and have lunch at the little diner that they have there, and then I come back and do it. Pick some more. But it's my day, and I bring friends, so we can all have a good time together. I know that they spray in the springtime when there's flowers, blossoms. They do not spray after that. So by the time the fruit is really forming, it's been washed off by the fog from the lake, because they're just 200 feet away from the lake, and the rain. So that's my Costanza story. The other place that I really, really like, and this is for the first week of July, the blueberries are like the second or third week of July. Everything comes on at the same time. So if you're a canner, I tell my husband, we only do sandwiches from June till October. You might get a couple of days where I have something free. But in the first week of July is cherries. It's the red cherry, just for pie filling and things like that. The sour cherry. I make sour cherry jam, and it's really good because if you use black sugar, we all got cavities afterwards. And then if you wait just a couple of days, they'll tell you that yes, indeed, they've got their sweet cherries. And their sweet cherries, they carry the bings and they carry renards, the yellowish orange colored ones. And that's at Fruit Valley Orchards. And that's in Fruit Valley, which is just west of Oswego. And you only have to go up to Manoa's up here. Minetto. You go to Minetto, and then you can go in the back way. So for me, it's an hour and a half drive. But I don't mind making it. So it's a great and wonderful thing. Good place, good people. So my cherries. The first year I picked cherries, I didn't know anything better. So it ended up that I picked the cherries, and I had a paper clip, and I pushed the pits out with a paper clip so that I could freeze all these cherries. I gathered all my friends around the table, and we all sat there pitting these things. Well, then the next year I found out about this, and this is an olive pitter. Now, I don't know many of us that have olive trees around, but there's an olive pitter. So if you go to the Wegmans, you can buy pitted olives with pits in them. It was a little bit better than the paper clip because now I could know where I knew I was going to get it out. But I bought 3 of these, and so I had 3 friends, and we all sat down going like this. Well, now I'm old, and I don't want the arthritis to bother me anymore, But my thumbs just dance. So I found out about this, and this is my favorite, and I've got it on backwards. But what happens is it's got this tray here, and I take handfuls of cherries that I've pulled cleaned and pulled the stems off of, and put my cherries there, and I go, and they roll into a bowl. I pull this out. I drop the pits into the recyclable compost, and I put it back, and it's a piece of cake. You can find them here in Syracuse. I don't know if you can find this brand. It might be an old brand, but at the Restaurant Supply. That's one of my favorite places when I have extra time. Go to the Restaurant Supply. So these are cherries. Cherries are cool. Blueberries are easy. Blueberries you don't have to pit. There's nothing you have to do but can them and eat them. Sometimes they're this big, and you might want to cut them in half or something. But I eat those while I'm canning. I'm picking. They have to weigh me on the way out too when it comes to blueberries. Jam. If you're making jam and you're only making it for yourself, then this is a great way to do jam. You can take it and this is a jelly bag. You put your berries in there, and it drips the juice out. Now, he's recording this. I'm not sure I should tell you my stuff, but I have been making jams for a long time. And when I make jam, I make jam. I don't have time to do a little batch at a time. So I go out and pick 2 bushels of crab apples. Now, crab apple jelly is my favorite. I don't know if you've never had crab apple jelly, but it's beautiful. And when it comes to the jar, it's pink, and it's clear, and it's pretty, and it shimmers and shines, and it's just a really cool thing. So what I do is I take my crab apples, and I wash them all, and I take off there's like the blossom end is on it, and so you wash that off, you cut it off a little bit, you take the stem off, and you chop them. You can chop them. You want to be able to get them to the point where you put them in your big pot. I have a stainless steel pot that I cook in, and you boil them, and you do whatever it says, cook them for whatever. Now I've got these berries, or apples, that have broken up. All their juice is there, and it's ready to do it. And I have a husband that participates at this point. Because what happens is when I start to do huge batches of jam like that with elderberries and crab apples and things like that, what I do is I take his 6-foot ladder and I sterilize it. I use Clorox. I do everything. I use my piece cleaners. I clean it all up. And I have a rope, and I have 2 linen pillowcases that I wash and keep just for jam. And I have a 5-gallon bucket. So what he does, or I use another one of these, I put that down on the bottom. I put my linen bag out. My husband is a nice guy, and he takes this and with a hot juice, and he pours it into the linen pillowcase, and then we tie the linen pillowcase and hoist it up on the ladder so that it will drip the juice out overnight. And then once I'm done, I've got lots of gallons of juice. I process them, I cook them, I boil the juice and stuff and make the jam. Ta-da! It's your choice whether you want to do it that way. But if you're a one-family person and you're only doing 6 jars of jam for the year, that's fine. If you're going to be doing lots of jam, you need to do it a little bit different. So there's my jelly recipe for lots of things. So then we just go back and we clean it all off and put it away. And the deers get to eat the rest of the deer. And I live in a suburb, and there's 14 deer that walk down behind the cemetery, the next door, 2 doors, and they'll hang out in the next door neighbor's pine trees. But then they know that I have this great compost pile. And I'm like, you're not supposed to eat it. You're supposed to forage. Go. We have a friend that has a portable cider press, and I put up 80 gallons of cider, and they come down and they eat the pressing. It's like, you can't do this. So anyway, so there's jam and jelly. There are the jam and jelly story. Jam was in the 30s and 40s and things like that. they made jam. They poured it into the jar. Some of the jars had this nice little top that would fit. This is not the jar that this jam sits on, but it would go over there to keep the dust and the dirt off of it. They'd pour the jam in, and they would boil their paraffin wax. And they would pour the paraffin wax on top of the jelly, and it would stay on top of the jam and get hard. Now, over the months, I'm not even going to say over the years, over the weeks, over the months, what happens is the paraffin constricts. And so now you don't have a seal. And what they would do is it's time to eat jam and jelly. They would take the paraffin off. They would take a spoon and scrape off the mold and throw that out and eat the jam. Now, what they didn't know was that the jam, the mold has fingers and it grows to the bottom. And that's why I tell you that God protects the simple, because we didn't know. So there's that. Now, when you're going to make your jam, you have a choice. You can go to the store and buy Surdo, which is a liquid pectin. You can buy Surgel, which is a powdered pectin. Or you can even buy, Ball makes a powdered pectin. And you can buy Pomona's pectin here at the health food store. And this pectin is it uses a calcium base to get it to gel. But if you've got somebody who's diabetic and likes jam, that's something to look at. You've got to use two different things, and you have to read the instructions to do it right. When I teach jelly classes, private jelly classes, we make all of them. And everybody makes them. They get the taste of the difference. Some people like the powder. Some people like the liquid. And everybody likes the sugar-free. So that's your jelly. Now, if anybody's come over and looked at this, you sit there and say, why do you have an egg slicer in your canning class? Why do you have a tomato slicer in your canning class? My pastry I use when I'm trying to crush fruit and things like that. If I don't want to do, like I said, the one time I used the food processor, it gets to the point where with a food processor, the food gets really mushy. I like to have a little more fruit in my jams than it might well be jelly. The difference between jelly is the juice, jam has the fruit. Well, I want to have pieces of fruit in my jam, so I mush them up with different things. I'm getting old. That happens. And so what happened was I decided I needed to figure out a way to do two things. I bought not a lug, not a hand basket, not a bushel. I bought a box of peaches. And I share them with my friends, and I put up 150 jars of peaches and jam and what have you. So I know that I've got to be able to do peaches. And that was the first thing Hannah helped me can, do peaches. And when I first learned how to do peaches, I sat around this big, huge table in our maternity home with a bunch of older women who had been canning for years. And basically it was, okay, this is how you do it. You stand up there, you make sure you have good hot water in the sink, because when you're peeling your peaches, when you're cutting your peaches, the peach juice is running down your arms and all over the floor and all over everywhere. And I was like, I don't have the ability to do this. I cannot do this. And I was like, Lord, you're going to have to show me what to do without peaches. So I remembered that I had an old broiler pan. The new stove, the broiler pans are small. But the old broiler pan was perfect. I could fit a full-size cutting board in there. So I put the full-size cutting board in the broiler pan, and Hannah would put the peaches in. She'd pull them out of the water. I would sit there. I took my chair, and what happens is, I took my chair and I set myself in front of the kitchen sink. I opened the cabinet. I put my knees in, and my belly was right up to the sink, and I was ready to can. I peeled those peaches. The juice went into the pan, the tray, and I would just take the pit, and that's why the grapefruit spoon is here. Because when you do peaches, you have a pith. You have to take your pit out, and so you get the pith. That's the red stuff that's hard inside. And how am I going to get this out? Because you have to use a knife, and then you scrape up all the food. Well, a grapefruit spoon has edges on the side. They're sort of serrated, and I would just go, and it came out. So that's my grapefruit spoon, and I love it, and that's how I keep the pith out of my peaches. So I would have my peels, which would go into the compost bucket. The pith would go into the compost bucket. I would take the juice that's in the boiler pan, pour it into a glass, and the first person that walked by drank it. and I had a lot of that. But so those are peaches, and everybody has little tricks that you're going to learn as you're going along on how to do things. But I know that as we're getting older, and we really want to do it, we want to be able to figure out how to do things that our bodies do not hurt. And because it's no fun. It's no fun if you sit there for 5 hours and now you're exhausted and it's not fun. So, tomato slicer, I use. And this, I will tell you about this when I get over here. And I know I have to hurry up and do this. Like I said, my class is normally a 2-hour class, and they gave me an hour and a half. So I will try to do it as fast as possible. This over there. Well, I can do this at any point, but does anybody know what this is? It's all these little doodads that are fun. This is to take the core out of pears. It's perfect. You get there and you just go. It's got the blade on it, so that it cuts that inside core. See it? Yep. Yep. And this is the T-ball. Everybody probably knows the T-ball. When I'm doing pickles, or when I'm doing something that calls for spices that you're going to want to take out later, you can put it in your T-ball, and all your spices. I mean, you can do a bouquet garni. You can sit and make a little bag and the whole nine yards. Or you can just put it in here, stick it in whatever you're cooking, and then just dump it later on. And wash it. It's really cool. So let's see. I've told you everything. Oh, this is for apples. The handle's on backwards because it's easier for me to scrabble. But you crank it. This one's nice because what it does is it peels it, it cuts it, and it pours it at the same time. So put your apple on, and it goes around, and as it goes around, this blade here takes the peel off, and it goes through here and forth. So root celery. I will make a quick root celery thing. I have not ever had a really lot of good luck with root celery. I guess maybe the places that I live are too humid. I thought the first place that I lived was not that humid, and so I was going to root cellar carrots. So we did. When you do root cellar and carrots, you use sand, and you put the carrots in the sand, and voila! You can come back later on in a month and eat your carrots. You know, they should be just as good as they were before. Well, mine weren't. I went down, and it was a little bit too humid, and I put my hand in the sand to get the carrot, and it was like, oh, God. So I threw 50 pounds of carrots away, and I cried the whole time because I could have frozen them or canned them or dehydrated them. So what have you? So root cellaring is an art. It really is. You're not supposed to put your potatoes with your onions. You're not supposed to put your apples by your potatoes or your onions because of all these wonderful things that they exchange the chemical gases and things like that. So you really need to know. I have done cabbage successfully in the root cellar, and I've done potatoes and onions and garlic. But you have to know, I mean, it's really hard. I mean, you've got to know that the humidity is here and the humidity is not there. And you don't want to put your canning jars with your fruits and vegetables because it'll rust the tops. And so it's something that you really have to learn how to do. And if you're a prepper, good for you. You can learn how to do this, and there's lots of things on the internet that shows you how. I just would like to be able to learn. I just don't have a basement to do it in. Does anybody have any questions that I did not touch on in canning that you want to know the answer for? Yes.
All I remember from was the day Mom came up with and we were like, yeah. I mean, I just don't know.
Well, she didn't can it if it went hard. With apple cider, what happens is, like I said, I put up 80 gallons of cider, but it's not cider anymore. I end up putting up really about 10 or 12 gallons of cider that I stick into a freezer. I have a few freezers, and I have to decide what I feel is important to go into those freezers. And I think the idea of trying to have cider that tastes like cider is worth putting it up. If you go to Walgreens, or not Walgreens, if you go to Wegmans or any place that sells cider, nowadays you're really not getting cider. Not the ones that we've had. I mean, if you remember cider had a bite to it. It had a real zip, and it was really good. He really liked it, and it had lots of pulp in it and what have you. What we're getting now is pasteurized juice, and so when I can, I know that I'm going to put up 10 or 12 gallons into the freezer that will be cider. The rest of it that I put up is canned, and it is juice. There's just no way around it. It's just juice. It tastes really good because I try to use, when you make cider, what you want to do is you want to use as many different types of apples as you can, and that's where you're getting the zip from, is a different taste. If you just use one type of apple, it'll be very bland. So you want as many different kinds of sour kinds of apples in there as possible. And Mom probably just took her gallons of cider and set it in the back room where it was cold, and kept it there. And what ends up happening is the apples ferment, and as the apples ferment, they get to be vinegar, and somewhere between cider and vinegar, you get a hard cider. So, and that's good. Somebody last year brought me dandelion wine, and we didn't like dandelion wine. But I mean, maybe she didn't make it right. But anyway, there you go. It's just all those things that you can make. This is what I'm going to try to do as fast as I possibly can. You can excuse me for a moment. I'm getting a little dry. On YouTube. I'm drinking my tea. I have become a dehydrator. A dehydrator of dehydrators. And then I hydrate them afterwards. I like dehydrated food. We would come to the health food store, and we would buy banana chips and things like that. And I will tell you that the banana chips that I dehydrate don't taste like the banana chips that you buy in a store, because they have honey on them, or they have coconut juice or something on them to get them a little sweet. I don't necessarily need those sweet. I think bananas taste pretty sweet all by themselves. Now, what you're going to find is that the food that you see here, now this is dehydrated apple. Now, when I dehydrate my food, I dry it a lot crispier than what you get in the store. And And the reason is because the commercial dehydrators use all sorts of chemicals and things like that. And they have special machines where they can get it to a higher temperature faster. I like the. I got to the point where I learned how to like the fruit the way it is. This will last me a long time. I put it in my jars. This is where I use a lot of the bale and wire jars that you get that nobody wants anymore. You can put all your dry food in there. You can put your spices. You know, I like the idea. I went into a health food store in Clinton where they have their jars all like this in the shelf, so that it keeps all the spices from getting the light, but you can read on the top what it is. So I've gotten to the point where I store a lot of my jars like that, my spices, and my dehydrated food. With dehydrated food, you want to not let them be exposed to the light as much as possible, and you want to keep them dry. So when I use something, I put a plastic on it, but it's so I can get it out of it all the time. When I'm using something like that, I really want to try to keep as much air out of it as possible. So I have lists. There was a quiz that normally I like to do, but these are dry apples. Does anybody have a clue? These are. No, but green peppers. So green peppers, this is one of the few vegetables that really loses its color. You know, it gets dark. But this one, I know you'll all know. Onions. Now this doesn't lose its color, and it doesn't lose its scent or its flavor. I mean, I can leave it open and everybody's going to smell it. So I use dehydrated onions in soups and stews and everything that you could possibly need an onion for. If you don't mind. She said, yeah, that was an onion. So the dehydrated onions, whenever I dehydrate food, that's what I'm going to use it for. I'm going to use, this is corn, and this is what it looks like, dehydrated, and that's what this is for. When I first started doing canning, I had a friend who was a canning partner. We would take our kids out and we would glean fields and we would do all this fun stuff. And one year we had a 15-passenger van and we filled the back of it with corn. We had like 2,000 years of corn. But it takes 10 years of corn to make a pound, just so you know. You know, you've got to have. So we started out with this wonderful little machine. This is a corn cutter. You put your corn there and you go like this and it takes all the corn off the cob. Well, after about 10 years of corn, we decided this was not the way to do it. And so my husband happened to be around that day, and we had my big blue pot, and he came back and he brought me a piece of wood about this big, and he said, put some Clorox or something on it, just, clean it up. And then he took a nail and he pounded the nail through, so I had a nail sticking up on this board. And what we did was we took our corn, smashed it on the nail, and I had a bucket, and my friend had a bucket, and we had electric knives, and we went, and it worked really, really well. And we sat there and we put them in, unfortunately, plastic bags is what we put them in, but, there's limited amounts of things to do with freezing So if you want to freeze your food, plastic is one of the only options you have. You could freeze it in a glass jar or something, but you wouldn't have any room in the freezer after a while. So those are the kinds of things that you have to give up. We stopped using plastic for Tupperware and all that stuff back a few years ago, 10 years ago. But sometimes there's just something you need to do. You need a plastic Ziploc bag to take something someplace. And, these are great. These are Roma tomatoes, and they'll smell like Roma tomatoes when you come up later and you want to look at them. Plum tomatoes. What you can do is you can cut them small like that, which is a good reason that you can use an egg slicer. You can use the egg slicer for bananas, strawberries, you name it, you can use it. I use the tomato slicer for peaches when I was canning peaches, because I would take the peach and I would just push it down like this, and it would be the same size. So I have the same size thing. So these are mushrooms. Now mushrooms get dark, as soon as the air hits them, they start to get dark, but they reconstitute really nicely. So when you start to think about the idea of dehydrating, you can get the Dehydrator Bible or Mary Bell's book. They're both really good books. And I'm sorry. You'll have to fix it later. So these are sweet potatoes. And we rehydrate them, and we can make sweet potato pie. We can have sweet potatoes, they're just mashed sweet potatoes, and they dry really nicely. Well, this is about 8 pounds of carrots. You can still see when you're putting it into a soup or a stew, it does okay. They rehydrate. This is a pound of peas. I didn't put any extra in because I wanted everybody to know. I bought a bag of frozen peas, and I dehydrated them so everybody would know what they look like. That is a pound of frozen peas. This is strawberries. And strawberries come out really nice. And strawberries, and I had blueberries, but the blueberries got eaten. And the peaches got eaten, so I'm sorry. I have to wait till this year to get more. But strawberries have their color. Blueberries retain their color, so do the peaches. Pears get a little brown. But if you like oatmeal in the wintertime, or oatmeal all year round, we get steel cut oats and we throw in a handful of this, and as it starts to cook down, it rehydrates, and it's great. It's great in granola. If you're making your own granola, it's really good. This reminds me of dried roses. The color is beautiful. It's like a deep purple, but it's deep. And it's really, really pretty. And once you rehydrate them, they're really tasty. Now these look like sticks. And that's about a half a bushel. Green beans. They call them leather breeches. They used to hang them in the attic, and that's what they are. They look like sticks, and they do rehydrate when you put them in your soups and stews. They do really well. So sit there and think that that's like a half a bushel of green beans. Cherries are fantastic. Cherries and blueberries are wonderful, and like I said, and peaches are great dried. We love them. If you're going to eat dehydrated food, you have to make sure that you have water, that you're drinking a lot of water when you're eating it, because what happens is it will rehydrate in your stomach and take all the stomach acids. So you want to be able to make sure that you're drinking and stuff with your dehydrated food. Now, I brought this because one of the things that I like to tell people about are dehydrators. I hate to see people get disappointed when they've decided that they're going to do something for the first time and they want to spend a bunch of money. Ron Peel, he sold dehydrators by the thousands. They were the little round ones about this big. They had maybe 5 or 6 trays about that tall. The problem with a round dehydrator is that the fans are on the bottom. And so the hot air will come up from the bottom, and the first couple of trays will dry, and the trays on the top will mold. So unless you're home all the time and rotating your trays to get everything to dry evenly, you might be very unhappy if you find that you have spoiled food or it takes too long. I bought this 25 years ago. It cost me $250 25 years ago. Now they sell them for like $350. It's like you can still get some for $250, but you want to watch if you're going on to Amazon or something like that, because some of the one that I've got here has 2 buttons, 2 knobs on the top. So if you're looking to buy a dehydrator, you want to make sure one knob is a timer. And you think, well, I don't need to have a timer. I can watch it. Well, I'm going to tell you that there are a lot of nights where I go to bed at 10, 11 o'clock after cutting up all this stuff and stashing it in there, or I started it in the morning and it's still not dry. So if I keep this on, it's always on. So it might get a little drier, but it's not going to mold. And it's not going to stop in the middle of the process. And now I don't know if the bacteria landed on it or whatever. So I like to be able to make sure that I have a timer because it's just really cool. The other is a temperature gauge. The temperature gauge for this particular dehydrator, it starts at 95 degrees for herbs, and then it goes all the way up to 145 for doing jerky. In the meantime, for me, what we do is we have a very drafty house. So if we're going to raise bread, we take the trays out, we put our bowl in there with our bread, and we turn it on to 110 degrees and put the front of it on, and it sits there and raises without us being there. We don't have to worry about flies landing on it or anything like that. You can make yogurt in this. You take your yogurt in little pint jars, and you set it in there and turn the temperature on, and it does its thing. I dehydrate fruits and vegetables. I've dehydrated jerky. I've dehydrated flowers and Christmas tree ornaments, that you make with the gingerbread, stuff like that. You can dehydrate in there. I mean, anything that you can think of that you want to dry, you can dry in here. Crackers, if you've got some Ritz crackers that got a little bit too moist, you can take them out of the package, put them on a tray, and dehydrate them, and they'll get crispy again. This dehydrator is an Excalibur. Now, they have other ones that you can look at. I particularly like this because I've used it for 25 years, and I know that I got what I paid for. I mean, it was really might have been worth, cost me a little bit of money, but buying a vacuum cleaner, you don't buy, if you get $69 vacuum cleaner, it lasts you for a year and a half, and that's it. This one I bought, and it lasts me. It has 9 of them. I like it because they come apart with cherries. Cherry juice gets all over it. I take it, I put it in the sink, and I wash it with soap and water, and it's done. There's the tray here. You put it on here so that you can put all your different fruit on there. I have tried at different times to be nice and neat and make the rows pretty, but that's a fool's errand. So you just put your things on there and it dries. The air comes off the back, not on the bottom. So there's a fan in the back, and it blows the air out straight across the trays, so they all get dried at the same time. Now, what happens is I can put almost a bushel of fruit in here at one time. they have what they call parallax drying sheets. And these things are like they say it's food grade. It's like a Teflon kind of thing, but it's not. So they'll explain to you what it is. But you can put jerky. You can put your fruit roll-ups on here. I was looking, if anybody needs to buy some heirloom organic plants, we bought $300 worth of seeds a couple of years ago and decided that we need to plant them. And so a friend of ours has a greenhouse, and we said, well, you can plant them over in our greenhouse. And so we started planting all these things. I have at least 300 or 400, maybe 500 or 600 seeds, and they all germinated. I have 50 eggplant plants. You know, what am I going to do with 50 eggplant plants? So it was like, we finally figured out that it would cost us $3,000 to build a raised bed for my backyard to grow all the vegetables. So I've decided that I'm going to sell the vegetables once they get into a nice size. I'm going to be selling organic heirloom vegetables, and you can save the seeds. You know, so you can have organic heirloom vegetables. But anyway, I found this really cool thing about eggplants. What am I going to do with all these eggplants? So I found a place that what they did was they cut the eggplants and dehydrated them. And then, well, they cut the eggplants, they pureed them, and then dehydrated them on a sheet. And then what he did was he cut them in long slices and cut them in half so that it would fit perfectly on a lasagna strip to make lasagna with eggplant lasagna. And so it was like, I could do that. I can get a box and a plastic box or something and put the eggplant in there that way. So, I mean, there's all these really cool things that you can do. Now, these things, if you look in the on their website, they're like anywhere from $9 to $15 a piece. When I took my class to become a master food preserver, there were two women that taught. One was probably about my age. The other one was somewhere between 85 and 30. Yeah, nice lady, real nice lady, but she was old and very wise. I mean, you want to know something about canning, this lady could tell you everything about canning. She and the other lady both wrote the program. But she was talking about the dryer sheets and how expensive they were. And she said, you need a dryer sheet to make your, use a cereal bag. Now, they got to be food grade, so they're not going to poison you, we hope. And they work. You can put your berries and make your jerky on there. And so, not jerky, but you can make fruit roll-ups on there. So, I am for telling people about this. I should start selling these or something. But they make small ones, about this big, has 4 or 5 trays on it, and I think it costs like $200 or something. If you know people that like to travel, if you're fortunate enough to be able to have an RV and you're traveling around to see all your kids that live all over the United States and you're going to spend 3 months, 4 months on the road, this works perfectly. February in Florida is strawberry season. So if you happen to be in Florida in February, you can go pick strawberries, dehydrate them in your RV, and put them in a little jar, and you've got strawberries for the full time that you're wandering around. So and you can do that with everything else that you want to do. So dehydrator stuff. If there is this is a little bit of you take your dehydrator once you've got your fruit roll-ups all dehydrated, and these are now not fruit roll-ups, these are fruit pieces. out. If you would like, that is a piece of fruit roll. If you'd like to try it, you're welcome to it. But I would be more than happy to share apples and strawberries with anybody that would like them. This one that you can taste. You take your fruit roll-ups. If you want to keep them to last a lot longer, you can put them in the freezer, and they'll stay much longer. Take a bunch. I mean, you want to be able to taste it. And the only thing you do is you take your fruit and you puree it, and then you pour it onto the drying tray, and it dries. I'm just going to tear it, and then you tear it off like Hannah's doing right now. She goes for the big pieces. So, if anybody has any questions about dehydrating, now time to be done. Since they can't yell at me too much, I started at 7 minutes after, and now it's 1:32. So, oh, I know. One last thing. If you like to do tomatoes, I try to be able to help people with knowing, how to do things to make their life easier. This is a gadget this is a Victorio. Victorio got bought out by somebody else, but they make them in stainless steel or aluminum, I think, for squeeze-up. I don't like aluminum. My mom does. I'll show you. So I try not to do anything with aluminum because it's enameled. So I bought this one. This will do tomatoes. It has a very small screen. It will do raspberries. Take the seeds out of the raspberries because they're jams. You don't want to have seeds in your dough. And it does pumpkin and things that have bigger seeds. And what it does is you put your tomatoes in the hopper, and it has a plunger that you can push them down in, and this is the end. But it fits in my box. So pretend that I have the screw on it, and you go around and around, and the tomatoes go down, and what happens is the juice comes out this way, and the skins go out that way, and you have tomato juice or tomatoes with pulp to go make your tomato sauce. Now, one year, I've been canning for a long time. We had like I said, we had a home, I think I told some people that, we had a homespun red moms and their babies. And I was looking out of the window of the kitchen one day, and across my yard was the judge. Now, the judge and his wife were in their late 70s, and he loved tomato juice. So his wife would put up tomato juice for him every year. And he had 2 cases of polio in his life. So he stood like this all of his life. This is the way he stood. So I watched him. He had 4 or 5 bushels of tomatoes out there, and I thought, we need to go out and help him. I mean, this is the right thing to do, is to go out and help him. Well, the phone rang or something, and I answered the phone and went back to the window to see if he was still out there, and he was. And I'm watching him. And he takes his tomatoes, puts them into the hopper, and I'm thinking, oh gosh, now he's going to be like this, doing his tomatoes. And it's going to be a lot of work, and I don't like watching him, so I'm going to go help him. Instead, on the picnic table outside, he walks over and picks up an electric drill that he has put a drill bit on that is the same size as this screw, and he goes, meow, meow, and it just goes, meow, and he picks more up, meow, meow, and my husband came home that afternoon, and I said, I didn't go out and help him, but I want one of those. So that's
why this little handle is never on there anymore, because Keith puts his drill. We do grape juice with the drill. We do tomato juice with the drill. The problem is that you have to constantly watch because the screens get covered, and so you have to stop it and clean it and put the screen back on. But it works. I mean, you could be doing this for hours. But instead, we've learned how to work smart. Tim the tool man is a good guy. So there I have it. Does anybody have any other questions? Well, if you're looking for it to look like the stuff in the store, if you're looking for it to be like an apricot that is sulfured or not sulfured, and it's dry on the outside a little bit but not dry on the inside, you're not going to find that. What you want to do when you're doing dehydrated food is you want to dry it so you can hear it crisp. You know, you want to hear it. It's dry now. You can keep it in jars for a long time, especially if you keep the light away and you keep it you keep it tight. Any other questions? Not hot enough, you lose. You know, I would think just the opposite. So I'm going to have to look that one up. You're going to have to write that down on your paper, and that's why I have the papers. You know, we'll collect the papers as you leave. I have those papers because if you have any questions that I don't know the answer for, I will get back to you. I will either Facebook you or email you or call you on the phone. I think for the ladies, I do know how to use the phone. I'm over 20. So, you know, and I will also tell you, I'll put you, if it's okay with you, I will put you on a list. And when I start to do hands-on classes in the next few weeks, I'm looking for a church or a community kitchen where I can teach hands-on classes. So if anybody knows of one, we are looking for a church or any place that's got a kitchen big enough to teach about 10 people, maybe 10 people at a time, where they get to do touch and feel. I really think it's really important for people to touch and feel the food that they're working with. I took a class on using knives. I paid $45 at BOCES to take this class on knife using. And I got there, and the guy said, "This is how you do it." And he cut and did all this stuff. And I'm like, "Okay, can we do that?" "Oh no, insurance." Yeah. I said, "Well, wait a minute. You didn't say that. I thought I was going to get to be doing this stuff. I mean, I've been cooking for a long time, and I really would like to know how to get my knives to do what everybody else, the chefs, do." And the next time they put that class, I said, "This is a demonstration only class." You know? So I don't want a food class. I want a food class to be a class that you can bring your own knife, you can bring your own food, and we will put it up. So, any other questions?
You talked about moving old stuff from kitchen
Mm-hmm.
My dad died 5 years after he sort of he didn't so what I found was definitely the self-service skills don't but how long well what is the outer
I can. If this is still rolling, please turn this one off. Yeah, I just, I will tell you that if I have a hat on as a master food preserver, working with cooperative extension and teaching you about how to do that, what they like to tell me is they want you to eat your food within a year, maybe 2 at the most. I can tell you that I have food that's natural living. I called the folks in Georgia, and they weren't happy. They were put under the gun like I feel like I am right now. And I said to them, I've got food in there that's old. And they said, well, I said, I know the answer, but you're going to tell me. You're going to tell me 1 to 2 years, And I said, but now really tell me the answer. And she said, well, did you can it? I said, yes. She said, did you know how sterile your kitchen was? I said, yes. She said, did you know your procedures were done properly and timely and all that stuff? Yes. Do you know how you kept your basement? Do you know how you kept your pantry? Yes. You always went and checked the food? Yes. Then it's really up to you. Because, it can stay longer than that. You go to the grocery store and pick up a can of food, and it's got at least a 2 or 3 year date on it. So I can tell you that I have grape juice in my pantry that's Buccaneer Day that I can, because we were blessed, somebody of vineyards out near Penny Inn blessed us, and it still tastes just as wonderful today as it did at our vineyard. Now, what I can tell you is that food loses its nutritional value from the time you cook it. As soon as you process it, it starts to lose its value. So, if you are a canner and you want to can for your health and your family, good food, keep around to eat, good vegetables and fruit in the wintertime, that's a good thing. If you are a prepper, and there are lots of people that are preppers, and they are putting up food because they want to make sure that if the price of food goes up and they can't afford what they want, or if there's an apocalypse of some sort, whatever happens, we never know. I'm positive that the people in 1929, when the banks collapsed, had no idea the banks were going to collapse. And so you don't know what your apocalypse is going to be. The banks collapsed. My daughter called me one day and said there were five presidents of banks worldwide that committed suicide within the last week and a half. Is that going to tell me something? I'm not a financial person. I don't know what that means. So, it was something in a paper that we thought we should let people know about. So I can just tell you that whatever your reason for putting food up, it's got to be your reason. And so if you know that you've done the proper things and you know that everything is fine, and you go down and check your food and make sure that nothing is getting moldy, and you'll be surprised. There'll be days that I go down there and everything is beautiful and wonderful, and then I go down and they're just like, where did you come from? Here's this jar of meat that's got this layer of white mold. It's like, come on, couldn't it have been the green beans? Why does it have to be the beef, So I can't I didn't get a chance to tell you. You're being gracious and sitting here and listening to me talk. If anybody needs to leave, please feel free. But I can tell you that I do a lot of canning of meat. I can venison, I can salmon, I can whatever can be canned, chicken, you name it, I've canned it. And so I can tell you that I put up Polish mushroom stew for Christmas presents. There's not a recipe for Polish mushroom stew in the book. Now, when I was a kid, when I was not a kid, when I was younger and started canning, what they told us was that you find the ingredient that takes the longest to cook in the book, and that's how you cook it. So with mushroom stew, that definitely means it's going into the pressure canner because it's beef, and the beef has probably got a longer time to cook than mushrooms, peppers, onions, and tomatoes. So
you go to and figure out what you're going to do. Now that's without my cooperative extension staff, because I can tell you that we're all going to can something that we want to try to do, but you just have to be really careful. And I want you to know how I was taught, so that at least you have some idea of the way I was thinking when I can. I can tell you no, and then have you do it anyway. But at least now you know. Take the thing that takes the longest and can it that way. Don't can it for mushrooms or something that's going to take 20 minutes or whatever. Can it for the longest, the whole, whatever you make it. That's the same thing when you go up here to look for spaghetti sauce and things like that. It'll talk to you about how long to keep it in. As soon as you're putting meat in it, it changes, life changes. So, anybody else have any other questions? Did I answer that okay? Did you?
I was just shocked.
Yeah. Yes. But again, you didn't know. I mean, were you there the day that Mom canned it and things like that? I mean, I know where I was when I canned my food. If your mom was still alive and she could say, I know that I did this right and I did that right, then she would say, I would keep it. Then I would keep it. But if, the question, there's a lot of people that end up having to throw out all that stuff. And I say to them, don't throw it out. I'll come. I'll throw the food out and keep the jars.
Oh, I get it.
I'll keep the jars. I'll wash them. I'll take them home with me. So, I believe the people that have the most canning jars at the end win. If you went into my basement, you would be surprised. For the preppers out there, yay! But I eat it every year, so. But please, if anybody wants to, feel free to ask other questions. And you've got my name and phone number. I don't know if my name is on there, but on the front page there's a phone number, I think, for to try to reach us. Ready, Set, Can, it says on it. There should be a phone number. But and I will collect papers if I could. If you've got questions on there, I'll answer them. So, thank you very much for coming.